Good morning. I'm Xavier Troussard. I'm working in the European Commission in the Directorate General for Education and Culture, where I'm heading a unit dedicated to cultural policy and intercultural dialogue. So maybe I should explain what we're doing with such a strange title. For the last years, at EU level, we never talked about cultural policy. So even the title of the unit is something quite strange and new. We had programs to support the cooperation of cultural operators, or programs for certain cultural industries, like the media program for cinema and audiovisual industries. But there was no such an idea to have cultural policy. It was exclusive remit of member states. In 2007, we produced a communication which proposed to engage into a new approach to those cultural issues at European level, and which proposed a European agenda on culture. And what is this agenda about? We propose to concentrate on three objectives, which are not objectives of the Commission based on competencies of the community, but which are truly objectives at EU level, which are supposed to be shared by the member states and their own remit and competencies, and by the stakeholders in the sector. And the three objectives we are focusing on are the promotion of cultural diversity and intercultural dialogue on one side. The second element, which I will develop a little bit more perhaps in the discussion, is culture as a catalyst of creativity. I will come back. And the third one is to develop culture as a vital element of our external relations. So to advance this agenda, we have set up new tools, because as I said, with the limited competencies of the community in those fields, we have to build on the competencies of the member states. So we have established, for the first time, an open method of coordination. I know this is typical Brussels jargon, but basically this is a method which has been used in all areas where the community has very weak competencies and where the main competence remain with the member states. We have such a method operating in the field of education. We have such a method opening in the field of social affairs, for example. The principle is quite simple. Member states agree on certain objectives, and they start to exchange about how, in their own policy remit, they try to develop policies that advance their contribution to this common objective. So we have started with a number of structures that are exchanging on policies with a view to produce not just a catalogue of best practices, but really policy recommendations in the field of culture to address those three objectives. We have also engaged a new dialogue with the stakeholders through thematic platforms where we have invited stakeholders from all the cultural sector. The big problem of the cultural sector is that it is very fragmented, and as they were looking at the EU just as a source of funding, the fragmentation was even a fight between the cultural industries on one side, the publicly financed arts and heritage sectors on the other. So we thought it was time for those sectors to start to work together and develop their capacity to come up with policy recommendations. But to focus perhaps a little bit more on the objective which is related to creativity and innovation. We have been working since 2006 on the economy of culture, and I think the potential of culture economically has gained wider recognition, but we want to go a step further in two directions. First direction, I talked about culture as a catalyst of creativity, which means it's not, and I think I just can build on the presentation which has been made on Guimarães as a capital of culture. We mean by this that strategic investment on culture can deliver on an environment which is favorable for creativity and which delivers then innovation, both in terms of economic sectors, economic growth, new clusters, but also social innovation. And you know that in the innovation concept, probably which has been presented to you earlier on in the seminar, we have a broad concept, but the reality through the indicators is always focusing on technology. So we have to reopen this question of how we look at innovation, also for political reasons. When we look at the charts about the ratings for innovation, we always find some 12 hubs in Europe that are creative for the last 20 years, and the rest of Europe is not creative, which would be a bit surprising. So we're working on this. We will be releasing a study in the coming weeks on the contribution of culture to creativity. This is the first line of our thinking. The second line of our thinking is to concentrate on the potential of cultural and creative industries. We have to keep in mind the distinction probably between cultural industries, the objective of which is to produce and disseminate cultural content, and creative industries which use culture as inputs like design, fashion, architecture. But they all have a certain number of common features we have to dig into to make sure that we, using different policy at community level, we maximize the chances for those sectors to grow. So I will come back on this. But